Convergence is the future of computing. So we've reshaped Ubuntu to combine the mobility of a smartphone and the power of a desktop on a single device. We unveiled Ubuntu for Phones at Mobile World Congress in February, and CNET declared it their best of show. Operators loved the design, and some of the world's largest have now joined our advisory group. We also gained the support of key silicon vendors to the mobile industry. So now, finally, we're talking to the companies who actually make phones, with the goal that Ubuntu will arrive on mid and high-end devices in 2014, right on schedule. Along the way, we learned something really interesting. We learned that new mobile technologies get proven in the lab, but then hit a production roadblock, because manufacturers don't want to select a new technology for a device that's supposed to sell 10 or 50 million units until they know it can be produced at that scale. Now, in the motorcar industry, we have Formula One to test new technology. But the mobile industry has nothing like that. There's no premium segment for expert drivers. It's like everyone is driving mass-produced sedans. We don't have a consumer testbed for cutting-edge technologies, but we do have a new mechanism for driving innovation: crowdfunding. Since the Ubuntu vision of convergence for the phone and the PC will push the limits of mobile computing, and since we're working with industry already, and since millions of you are passionate about the latest and greatest phone technology, software and hardware, we're in a perfect position together to change the way innovation comes to the mobile industry. So,
now, wouldn't you be excited about this phone? I mean, this phone can not only be a smartphone like the smartphones you have of today, like the Samsung Galaxy, iPhone, Windows Phone, whatever. It's also a phone that can be used as a desktop once you dock it and plug it into a monitor. I'm really excited about that because I've used Ubuntu at home and I'm very happy with it. And you know, I think it's a great idea to have this crowdfunding approach to fund the concept of this phone and bring it to fruition. Only thing is, as of now, it looks like they might be somewhat short of the goal by the time the remaining days of this fund pass. So what I'm here to do is provide the Canonical group, who helped make this possible, some ideas of bringing at least the prototype to fruition instead of mass producing many of these devices to fruition, because I think that's more achievable than trying to achieve a very ambitious target of mass producing many phones. Because I understand what the problem is that was outlined in this video, the fact that none of these phone manufacturers are interested in applying the new technology until they can be sure that there's going to be enough consumers to allow them to make enough of a profit margin and mass produce these phones. Well, in order to get to that point first, you really need the prototype made first. And that prototype, what that does by having a fully functional prototype is it enables you to know how much it's going to cost to manufacture and procure one unit. Once you know that, you can demo it as well. Once you have a fully functional unit of this type of phone, you can demo it all over the world, and then you can see how much buzz it's going to generate. You can see how many people are interested. Obviously, from this crowdfund, we know that there are approximately 20,000 people interested in this phone. But it's kind of a tougher sell when you don't actually have a fully functional working concept in place where you know that the software is working. So if this campaign does not achieve its goal, that's a big if, my approach is to use other funding sources besides crowdfunding. So given that the two things that need to be solved is the forecasting issue, where handset manufacturers need 50 million consumers to actually be the demand for this type of product, Well, we need to figure out how we can forecast that accurately. The second thing we also need to do is figure out how much funds we're going to have to make up for the gap that this crowdfunding isn't able to meet. So I'm going to talk about those two issues in more detail. So to address the second issue, the funding issue, let's take a look at the fact that as of now, we can see that there's approximately $10 million, 9.5, I'm just rounding up to $10 million. Say at the end of the campaign, this crowdfund only achieves $10 million. So what that means is you're going to need $22 million to make up for that. So let's turn to other sources. One guy on my channel said, well, why don't you ask for government subsidies to fund this? And I thought that was a great idea. Some other governments fund their major industries. I think this could be a major tipping point industry for Great Britain. So I think the British government should look into funding something like this, because it can be a major source of job creation for that country. And it can also be a major source of job creation for the US as well, because Mark had mentioned that some of the sources of the materials were in Silicon Valley. So that's one area. And say they subsidize it $5 million. Well, then you need to make up the other $17 million somewhere else. And I think other sources of funding could be using different approaches. We know on eBay, we can use eBay to auction off items. And why don't Canonical produce, say, 300 units? I'm just giving a rough idea as an example. 300 units to auction off on something like eBay, and then they can find out how much interest is generated in those 300 units. I mean, it gives them an idea of how many people are willing to pay money to buy one of these products and how much they're willing to pay. So it gives you an idea of the forecast, and then it also gives you an idea of what the price point should be for the product. And it also gives you funding level, that you can add to the total that you can use toward the $32 million goal. The other approach I have is the lotto approach. I think the lotto approach is more achievable in terms of getting more contributors and more interest in the product. With the lotto approach, we know that in the States here that people can invest $1 or $2 in a lottery ticket, and then possibly, I know the chances are very low, but still the average person can contribute $1 to $2 for a possible lotto jackpot of millions of dollars. And I think they can use that same approach with any one of these units. So say those 300 units, they could put them in a lotto drawing situation where at the end of the campaign you find out how many people registered their $1 or $2 and then hold drawings. So you know how many people are interested, and it gives them an idea as far as forecast figures for those handset manufacturers and those suppliers of crystal, etc., etc. Then it also gives them an idea of how much funding they need to make up as well. So the lotto can generate a lot of money, and it does that as well in the States here for the local state governments. So hopefully Canonical considers these ideas, and in the event that this crowdfunding approach doesn't reach its goal for this particular campaign, I think they should go for it. If this campaign doesn't achieve its goal, I think they should still go for it with other sources, multiple sources, to at least get those prototypes available and get the forecast generated for those handset manufacturers as far as consumer interest in the products. Thanks for listening.